feel like I have company being an idiot with me and Lane Kiffin. Not for the same reasons, but it sure didn't feel like the Ole Miss Rebels missed their old head coach last night in that Sugar Bowl win against Georgia.
Not even a little bit. And I know the first half for Ole Miss didn't look like they were getting in a groove, but coming out of that half, I don't know what was said to Trinidad Chambliss, but he was so fun to watch in that second half. And I just was wondering the whole time, what is Lane Kiffin thinking? What is he doing?
I thought the same thing.
You know?
So what did you think that Lane Kiffin was thinking as he was holding hands with Kim Mulkey at the LSU women's basketball game last night in Baton Rouge?
You know, I was here with Aaron Torres, who was in 7 to 11 Pacific time, and I was like cheering or like reacting to Trinidad Chambliss every time he scrambled and extended the play and then got some crazy, throw downfield. I was like, oh my God. And I think Lane Kiffin was like, no. Drop that ball. That's what I think Lane Kiffin was doing.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that human nature, or the little devil and the angel talking in your ear.
Yes.
The angel's like, those are your guys.
Yes.
Cheer for them. And the devil's like, you got work to do at LSU. They need to lose. Ole Miss is nothing without you. And that's probably the voice that took over in his head. For as much as assistants that are with Ole Miss now that will come to LSU, if they stay at Ole Miss another week, it could really hamper his efforts for getting players in the transfer portal and that whole deal. So I think ultimately Lane Kiffin's new job took over in what he wanted to happen last night.
Yeah, because he knows what's going to come with that. I feel like he had a tweet ready or to put, oh, guys, you tried your hardest. I'm so proud of you. Mm-hmm. But instead, he couldn't send that tweet. And all he did was that little flag to like indicate support or whatever. Yeah. And it was like, you knew he didn't want to send that because in reality, like you said, I don't think they missed him one bit. They did not need him to go out there and kick some ass.
Yeah. I think that and you've worked with me long enough. You know what I want to do when I come back from a week-long vacation? The first thing I want to do is say, like, how'd things go? How was, say, the Sunday show that I do with Kerry Rhodes?
Yes.
Let's say I missed the Sunday show.
Yeah.
And I come back the next week. Yeah. And I ask you, Monse, how did the Sunday show go? What do I want to hear?
You want me to say it went fine, but we really missed you.
Yes. I don't want to hear great.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it was a really good show. I don't want to hear that. Yeah. It may have been, and I may not have been missed at all, but I want to be missed.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Lane Kiffin wanted. Lane Kiffin wanted to be missed, even though it was his own decision to leave and leave when he did. And he says that it's Ole Miss's decision, which I believe. He wanted to coach the Rebels. But he ultimately had the decision of, do I take the LSU job and not coach them, or do I stay at Ole Miss and try to see this run through its national championship? He made the decision to leave, and that's the bed that he has to sleep in. But I know that in the heart of hearts, he wishes things wouldn't have gone as well for Ole Miss as they did last night in the Sugar Bowl.
I totally agree that he wanted to be missed, but I think it was something else. Not just that he wanted to be missed, Dan. He wanted to be right. He said he was leaving because he wanted to go win a championship. So right now, you have left a championship caliber team. And so he wanted to be right in saying that I left because this team couldn't get there. Oh, so I agree. He wanted to be missed, but more than anything, I think he wants to be right.
And not only did they beat Georgia last night, they avenged the loss from the regular season when they lost in Athens, when Ole Miss had a sizable lead in that game, only to have Georgia kind of take over in the fourth quarter. So last night in a game where Ole Miss is the one that makes the comeback, there was a point where it felt like Georgia had regained the momentum, and in a 3-point game, they're driving for a touchdown. And there were calls that were leading up to that point that sure seemed to go in Georgia's favor. A face mask call, other things happening. I mean, Georgia kind of panicked and going for it when they did on the fourth down in Ole Miss territory. But to the Bulldogs' credit, they were able to rebound. And it's a 3-point game, and Georgia's got a goal-to-goal situation. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is the part where Georgia wins, and the Ole Miss story comes to an end, and we're all sad. Instead, they hold them to a field goal, and then they drive down and they kick their own field goal to win the game.
You did feel like within the 2 minutes that it was going away from Ole Miss just for the sense of you were running out of time. Like it wasn't that they weren't doing it. It's just like, oh my goodness, you're about to run out of time after this great third quarter, start of the fourth quarter, and then they managed to still get the win. And the end of that game. Did anyone know what happened? No one knows what happened at the end of that game.
It was an absolute
They took the stage out 3 times, Dan.
Yeah, I know.
They took the stage out 3 times.
It reminds me, if you see that TikTok clip where the guy's carrying the bench across the floor in like the 8th grade game and some kid's got to like hurdle it because anyway, that was just, there was ice on the field. Like they had already doused Pete Golding with the Gatorade.
Twice.
So Pete Golding took a picture with his kids and then they had to run 2 more plays. There was a point where he's on the field and somebody's like, hey, can we get a photo? And he stopped because he had his kids there, took a picture. They had to move off because they reviewed the backwards pass on the kickoff. They realized that there was enough time. And so then they did the onside kick and it was covered by Georgia on the ground. And they thought, oh, that was over. That lost a second. By the way, another reason why you need tenths of a second on the clock in college football. That is another reason. The official in the booth at ESPN says, well, if you just recover it on the ground, no time elapses in that portion. But we just thought as soon as the one hit and you touch the football, it expires and the game is over. Not so fast, my friend. As Lee Corso would say, yeah, Monse, it took forever. It took like 15 minutes. It felt like guys at Buffalo Wild Wings were just going crazy trying to hit the overtime button, trying to keep this game keep going and going and going and going.
No, it was an awesome ending because it was hilarious as you just saw it unravel. Like, it's over. No, it's not. It's over. There's the stage a third time. No, take the stage away. But despite all of that, Ole Miss pulls off this win in a convincing way. They didn't just win it because Georgia lost it, right? They won it because they came back in the second half. They adjusted and they took you down.
I don't think that the Georgia 4th down call wasn't great, but no, Ole Miss made plays in that game to win it. And that's what then now makes this so intriguing. Because Monte, I think that you hit it on the head of Ole Miss proving Lane Kiffin wrong that he thinks he can win a championship at LSU. I think he thinks he can win multiple championships at LSU. I don't think that he thought that he could win multiple championships at Ole Miss. But last night, I think, was a perfect example of addition by subtraction. I don't know if Ole Miss wins that game with Lane Kiffin last night. I don't know if that happens. There seems to be something else going on with this Ole Miss team. And I know they played a game with him or without him already, but just the way that they respond and kind of just don't want this thing to end, I got that sense. There isn't a chip on their shoulder if Lane Kiffin stays, right? And I feel that there is now, that there is something to prove. And these players, some of whom will follow Lane Kiffin to LSU and transfer to be an LSU Tiger. There are players on Ole Miss's team that will do that and get their NIL money. But if Lane Kiffin is on the sidelines last night for Ole Miss, Georgia is in the semifinals of the college football playoff. I think it was his his leaving and his absence last night and how Pete Golding and the staff have rallied the players that allowed them to pull off the upset last night. Not that it was a carbon copy of the game that they played in Athens where they had a lead and let it go, but it was the opposite. They had their own lead, let it go, and then came back. And with Lane Kiffin there, that's what happens. With Lane Kiffin there, I don't think it happens last night.
Yeah, it's like what pushes a team to just have an edge over another team? And it looks like for Ole Miss, I agree with you. Losing Lane Kiffin or Lane Kiffin walking away from them has propelled something beyond just wanting to win from probably what they wanted to do, obviously, with him. But even with that, Trinidad Chambliss doesn't know if he's going to play again. He's fighting to get more eligibility, which, listen, I love that guy. I love watching him play. You can't play another year, my guy. Like, you just can't. I don't think you should because then it gets messier and messier, and that's a whole different conversation. So he doesn't know what he's going to do. You know what I mean? Like, his story alone within the story of Ole Miss is great. Him, you know what I'm saying? The story of Trinidad Chambliss is great by itself. Then you have the whole story of Ole Miss fighting because Lane Kiffin is an idiot.
I want to bring in Jason Stewart because one of the reasons I'm an idiot is I complained about some of the rematches that we had in the college football bracket, and this being one of them, this being a very SEC-centric matchup, but it sure seemed to expand well outside the SEC lines, especially for you.
So this speaks to how well I follow college football and enjoy it. I barely knew this was a rematch. So I became a massive Ole Miss fan given the entire Lane Kiffin ordeal. I think I was one of many people that are massive Ole Miss fans and temporary Ole Miss fans. And I thoroughly enjoyed watching them last night, and I was fully behind them. And I'm this guy. I was watching, and I was learning new things about this team that I'm sure you knew all along. And then you start learning like the little social media things, like when Kiffin's first post was a flag, and I'm thinking, there's no way in heck that a Confederate flag is in our emoji system. Why would he put a Confederate flag out there, knowing the history of the program? And then you go and you search, and it's a Trinidad flag. Oh, Trinidad's the name of the quarterback. All these things I'm playing catch up on, but it's a great experience.
Yeah.
And then just watching them and knowing him the way he must have taken a kind of, it was like one of those, he took it with the pride. It was a punch to his pride, but then you read that he got a $500,000 bonus, and you're like, that feels dirty, and that's probably why he worked that into negotiation. But anyways, it was a great experience last night. I really enjoyed watching that.
In a game that, again, I thought that only a certain region of the company, and then off of what happened in the game prior, that maybe people would be like, okay, this Indiana story is crazy to see. I don't know if Ole Miss topped it, but it sure gave it a unique chapter of its own last night. And to think Lane Kiffin, and to then hear the stories of Lane Kiffin wanting to go on College game day, thought about going to the Sugar Bowl himself, which would have been a complete distraction. How about Ole Miss winning in Louisiana? Like just in that representation in the state that now, I know it's not Baton Rouge, but Baton Rouge ain't far from New Orleans. So but just the representation was really, really, yeah, it was an awesome atmosphere. And for the energy or lack thereof, and I don't blame Oregon and I don't blame Texas Tech, but there was just nothing buzzworthy about the Orange Bowl, which started early, and Oregon had to travel across the country. But when you look at what happened with the Rose Bowl, with the crowd there, every year Rose Bowl has great crowds. But when you put two SEC teams in the Sugar Bowl, like we talk about the Rose Bowl maybe being a spot where a national championship game should always be held. Maybe as we're looking at the bracket here, and I know that Greg Sankey and the SEC wouldn't want this, but if you're putting in 5 or 6 SEC schools, have them always play in the Sugar Bowl, because that's the sort of atmosphere that you would get to be able to fill it out, let alone having a coach leave a team and abandon a team prior to their run and get revenge on another team that they lost to earlier on in the season. All of that came into play, but there was a lot of good with the college football playoff in the way that it worked out, and I didn't see it happening this way. Monse actually did, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. But that's kind of why I'm an idiot, because I thought New Year's Day was an absolute win for college football, and what a win for Ole Miss.
What a win for Ole Miss. But I agree with you. That Oregon-Texas Tech game, it was like, what? You played today? This meant something? It had no aura.
No.
Nothing to it.
It was not cinema. That's what the kids like to say.
Yes, it was not cinema. That was that meme, right? Cinema. Yeah.
It was not cinema. You're right, there was no aura.
No.
On a scale of 1 to 100, I give it a 6-7. That's what I did. We'll continue that in 2026. She is Monse Bolanos. I'm Dan Beyer. Iowa Sam is a college football fan. How great was yesterday on New Year's Day for you in watching football, just as someone who loves the sport?
I certainly think that the Ole Miss Georgia game made up for some. I mean, listen, the Alabama and Indiana and the Oregon Texas Tech games, like, were not competitive. So Georgia, Ole Miss made up for a lot of that.
Yeah,
and then the night before, I'm sorry to your Buckeyes, but at least that was more competitive. And I think we're just trying to avoid these like huge blowout games.
See, that's and we're gonna dive into that, because I think this is where I think Sam and I are on the same point, but I feel like I have to admit that I'm wrong on some stuff.
Yes, you were wrong. But just to Sam's point, that I actually think, even though Indiana blew out Alabama, Indiana was fun to watch.
Yeah, it was.
Oregon
it was
shut out Texas Tech, and I couldn't tell you one thing that happened in that game.
That was also, those were two surprising results.
But I couldn't tell you one play that stood out in my mind. I could see Fernando Mendoza making throws in the third quarter. You know what I mean? Like, that game was so boring. I don't remember anything of it. Even though the other one was a blowout, it had moments. It was so different, even though they were both blowouts.